Hey there, my name is Spencer Lott. I'm the puppet builder. We're recreating some of the characters from the land of make-believe.
My name is Katrina Whalen. I'm the producer of the Miniatures Unit. This is our miniature team.
Feels good. I'm happy to come out of retirement for a project like this. Meow meow, getting the gang back together.
Shall we?
I grew up on Mr. Rogers, and the first time I saw Daniel Striped Tiger and Pink Friday, it just resonates like in the deepest recesses of my childhood.
The real Fred Rogers did all of his own puppeteering. And so Tom had to learn how to do exactly what Fred did with the puppets. He worked with Spencer Lott, who was our puppet maker and lead puppeteer.
We did a puppetry masterclass, kind of a little workshop. And we did some puppet push-ups and calisthenics and kind of introduced him to the puppet. You're doing the same emotional journey, you're doing the same technical beats as any other actor or performer, but it's translated through your hands.
Daniel Striped Tiger gets Fred to verbalize difficulties that he has faced about his family, about growing up.
Daniel, you set?
I'm set.
Thank you, Daniel.
Did she just talk to the puppet? Daniel isn't just a puppet. Daniel is Fred, and Fred is Daniel.
Fred had this little monitor he would look at, and he was looking at the image and having to do it backwards. He actually didn't realize they could have flipped the image for him, but once he learned it that way, he kept it that way for the whole time he did the show.
Fred Rogers has a very specific style of puppetry. It's very confident and still. And so both Tom and myself and all the other puppeteers on the set, we're gonna really try and work to make sure that it's thoughtful and deliberate and just as still as it was on the show.
Puppeteering the puppets, you use these 3 fingers, which means I love you, and sign language, which was something that Fred loved.
I don't know what to do.
Oh, Daniel.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie, he is puppeteering Daniel, and Lloyd is watching him, and Tom didn't actually know that I was pushing in on him. He thought we were pushing in on the puppet, and so he's looking at a real monitor and just focusing on singing this song and puppeteering, but the camera's actually just pushing in on his face. And there's something really vulnerable and just beautiful about watching him work that hard.
The script called for 6 primary characters from the land of make-believe. Daniel Tiger is kind of our hero, King Friday the 13th, Queen Sarah, Lady Elaine Fairchild, Henrietta Pussycat, and X the Owl.
We didn't want to touch the originals. We don't want to mess them up, and production is really hard on things, and we would just never want to do that. But we feel like we really captured something and recreated them perfectly, and they operated the same as the original puppets.
So we were able to visit the Fred Rogers archives, and we get all these beautiful photos of the puppets. So we're constantly referencing these. We're recreating these iconic characters, and so we're looking up as much about the dimensions of them, the textures, the styles, the paints, how they were fabricated.
We start out with a clay sculpt base. We coat that in a layer of silicone to make a mold out of that, and then press in 2-part epoxy. It forms in about 24 hours, and you can really see what you've come out with and buff it out a little bit, and if you need to, make another mold and keep going.
She looks great.
Every little detail, a whisker on Daniel Tiger that was a little droopier than the other whisker, they were recreating every detail, so much so that everybody who worked on the program came and went, oh, did you borrow our puppets?
We scoured bead stores and the internet for these buttons.
So hard to
and we
find.
found one seller who had a package of 4. And Lady Elaine has 5. And so we are custom making the 5th button for her sweater. But we're thrilled. These are like the actual buttons. Yeah. So this is for all the Fred heads at home. Lady Elaine, when we took out the original, we discovered that she's got these kind of peculiar patches on her sleeve here, and so we are matching those exactly.
The most amazing thing was, for whatever reason, the puppet is like magical, and Spencer would put it on his hand, or Tom would put it on his hand, and everyone would start to talk to him instead of to the person puppeting him. And you would have these moments with Daniel that felt really profound. Fred knew the power of puppets, and I think we got to see that on set.
I know, and it's our last day here on WQED. I know. Sad, right? Me too.
The Empire State Building looks amazing.
One of the great qualities of the script is that it's within the world of the show, and so as we transition from one scene to another, these models become the pieces that tie them together.
We're doing New York, and we're doing Pittsburgh, and we're doing the bridges, and we're doing all of that kind of stuff that you always wanted to see on the show, but you couldn't.
We never wanted to make it look super high tech or something out of the world, so we did everything practically. So when we wanted to go from the little miniature neighborhood to the wider Pittsburgh, we ended up just building the wider Pittsburgh, figuring out the angles so that we could just pan over a couple mountains and find New York City. We used this rule, which was, it's Mr. Rogers Miniatures plus, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility. We couldn't do anything that they couldn't do. Katrina Whalen and our team of people who built the miniatures worked for 12 weeks building all the miniatures.
It became a question of how to extrapolate the design of the neighborhood into the design of all of these other places that we visit throughout the film. We were very fortunate when we started work on the miniature unit that we had access to resources here in Pittsburgh. We were able to go scout the neighborhood model itself, which is over at the Fred Rogers Company. So we went over a couple times and took measurements and really photographed everything and looked at how the original model was built. The original neighborhood model used a lot of available elements, hobby kits that they could get at local trained hobby stores, as well as a lot of very down and dirty reindeer moss, twigs off of bushes in the front yard. And so we looked at ways that we could incorporate that way of constructing into our own.
There were over 50 New York buildings that were all illuminated. In Pittsburgh, I don't even know. They had to be hollow, and they had to be made of a material that would diffuse the light. And then we had to skin them so that the light was allowed through certain parts of the building, like the windows, and not in others. We used various woods. We used some balsa wood, foam core, plywood, pink insulation foam. Some of the hills are carved out of that, all kinds of things.
We put them through the ringer. I mean, we recreated all of these different miniatures of all of these different locations from our shooting, and by the end, the miniatures were like falling apart because we shot them so much, but they just look so great. And it was this neat bridge between Lloyd's world and Mr. Rogers' world.
It is remarkable to see all this incredible talent and all of these days spent on what essentially will be very brief interludes. But I think the way that it was incorporated into the script will help our contribution enhance the story and feel like it ties the narrative even more tightly together.
The theme of this whole movie could be time and care, because everybody cared and loved what they were doing so much.